Welcome to another edition of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez, and across from me is lead writer on DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. We are very excited for this episode because we are looking forward to Week 6, hosting another divisional opponent, the Los Angeles Chargers, coming to Empower Field at Mile High. The Broncos winning the last 3 games. The Chargers actually losing their last 2 games and coming off of a bye week.
Yeah, it's an early season matchup, right? But it's a big one, just in terms of what's at stake here for the Broncos. Can get to 4-2. You do not want to look too far ahead, but you see in New Orleans, they're going to be playing a rookie quarterback probably next week. The Panthers come to town after that, so you can't look past those games, but past this game. But I think there's something to be said for the fact that if you can get this one, you've got a chance to maybe do something special here to start the season. Obviously, it's 1 week at a time. It's every game matters. But, this is a big one. The Broncos have won 5 consecutive games at home against the Chargers. I believe I was talking with my counterpart in L.A., Elisa. I believe the Chargers have lost 9 of 10 in Denver. And there's been some pretty wild games there. Or here, rather, over the last few years. I mean, you look back at last year, little Jordan Humphrey has that long touchdown in Jared Stidham's first start. You look back to 2022, Jerry Rosberg gets a win as the interim head coach. You look back to 2021, another impressive game there that the Broncos win a tight one. And then, you just keep going. 2020, the KJ Hamler comeback. 2019, Drew Lock's first win. So really, over the last 5 years or so, these games have been pretty memorable.
Yeah.
And a chance to get to 2-0 in the division, get to 4-2. It's a big one.
Yeah. I think I saw a stat somewhere, like the last 2 games have been decided by like 1 score or less or something like that, which is pretty...
I think 12 of 15 at home have been decided by 1 score or less. So they've been tight games.
That's pretty crazy. Like, these games have been very close. These games have been very exciting to watch, for sure. And I think one of the biggest things, Pat Surtain II had said that these divisional games matter because winning of the division really sets you up for where you want to go later down the line in the season. So I know you had mentioned, let's not look too far ahead, but this game is pretty big. Now, we're going to get into a lot of things on the podcast. We're getting into this matchup, a little bit of Bo Nix talk. Obviously, we're definitely going to talk about the defense, but we have to get to Eric's favorite part of the show, which is the very start when we look at the comments that were left on the YouTube channel. So make sure you guys subscribe, comment, like the podcast, all that great stuff for a chance for your comments to be read on air. And I have a little update on my 4-year-old nephew because he was very excited when we mentioned his name. I showed Aric the video. He was just very shocked. He was like, Antonio? She's talking about me? It's like, yes, I'm talking about you because, you're one of our listeners, Antonio. Miss you. But we have other listeners and other subscribers and commenters that we also want to highlight. So,
we do.
What do we got?
And I should say that 2021 game, I was like, what happened in that game? Oh, that's the game where Pat Surtain had a pick 6 and 2 interceptions. So these have all been pretty memorable games here for the Broncos. So it's exciting. We're going to read some comments from both the Thursday show and the Monday show.
Oh, getting extra love there.
Izzy Leone, this is from the Thursday show, says, let's go Broncos, need this victory over Oakland for my sanity. I kind of still like calling it Oakland, even though it's Las Vegas. Like, they'll always be Oakland to me. Sick of losing to the Raiders. This team is playing hot AF right now. I think I can say AF. Who knows? Nobody knows what that stands for.
I don't know what that stands for.
I'm not saying it stands for anything, so I think I can say it on the podcast.
Yes.
Quentin Caldwell. I feel like Quentin's becoming a frequent commenter. Okay. I agree with Aric. If you start your comment that way, I'm going to read it on the air.
I was going to say, that's your burner.
I'm going to read it. If you use the nice-looking jerseys too much, it'll lose its appeal. I love the Rams jerseys. When I see the uniforms too much, it gets old.
Oh, that's fair. Sure. Pat is not in agreement with that because he said he wants to wear the jerseys
everybody
twice. He says they're swaggy.
That.
He says they're swaggy.
You wouldn't know, though, until, if it was your birthday every day, your birthday would stop feeling special.
For you, maybe. I'd be...
Okay, you want your birthday every day. Got it. Nightwing Lopez. Can the Broncos YouTube channel reply to this comment? I want to make my family jealous. I don't have control over the typing comments, but I can reply to you here and make them jealous. So Nightwing Lopez, play this to your family.
Shout out to you.
Jay Barsons, you want mean comments? I don't agree. Bo's biggest area to improve is recognizing pressure when he has the lowest sack rate among all quarterbacks who played the full year. That comment took you from Aric DiLalla to Aric DiLulu. LLJK. Love the show.
Well, Aric DiLulu.
That's nice, huh? I like that.
That's good.
I think that's all in fun from J.A. Barsons. I will say, it's not that he doesn't recognize the pressure. He's obviously not taking very many sacks. I think the thing he needs to improve, or at least going into week 5, was the passer rating against pressure. He had the lowest passer rating in the league against pressure. I'm sure that improved in week 5. I've not seen an updated leaderboard in terms of where he stands, but it's not just about taking sacks. It's also, can you complete the ball down the field, or are you throwing in completion? So there's more to it than that. Adrian Fernandez, 82006. Love the throwback uniforms. Party emoji, party emoji, party emoji. 3 of them.
Wow. It's a fiesta.
James Diego, 10, says, both of you two seem to gel together. Go Denver. Dominic Jaramillo says, love Broncos weekend. That's not what this show is, but that's okay.
Hey. First of all, you realize that you have taken them to Broncos weekend because you've been a very special guest on that show. See your fandom follows you across all platforms.
We got a lot of people calling you Eliza. We got to fix that.
Yeah, it's Elisa, not Eliza. I am not a Thornberry.
Richard, not a Thornberry.
We'll see how many people get that.
Richard Acevedo. Eliza, I love that jacket. Somebody else says, Eliza, where did you get your jacket from? Well, she's not going to answer because that's not her name.
I'm wearing a new jacket today. I'm wearing a new jacket today.
Be a good person?
Be a good person. Be a good person and call me by my proper name. Elisa. Be a good person, guys. I think it's right here. There you go.
I'm not talking so that it'll show up. Now I'm talking. J4N Style says, isn't the first rookie quarterback to have 4 straight wins from the Commanders? No, first quarterback to have 3 straight wins for the Broncos as a rookie is Bo Nix. Let's travel down YouTube Avenue now.
Oh.
And let's go to the post pod.
Ah, okay.
And I should say, maybe it's a good time to mention, I'm doing these instant reaction podcasts.
Oh, plug.
Elisa.
Plug away. Plug.
Right after the game, I go into a room in the stadium and I just talk to myself for 20 minutes and then I put it on the internet. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It's not on YouTube, but it is on denverbroncos.com. It's on basically anywhere you can find a podcast. And so is the opponent preview, which we'll put up tomorrow on Friday. We got Eric Smith from the Chargers this week. So two little plugs there for other content that we have.
Yes, make sure you guys listen to Eric.
Yeah, listen to me. Okay, Bill.
Very wise.
Bill Bell L 9462. In case you hear any noises, by the way, we're in an active construction zone.
Yeah.
They are currently building this lovely facility here at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit. And it's a little noisy sometimes, but we're doing our best.
You know, we've survived lawnmowers, we've survived rain, and now we're surviving construction. I mean,
that's right.
We do what we need to bring this pod to the people.
It's kind of like the big 3 right there: lawnmowers, rain, and construction. Okay, Bill Bell L 9462. Bo is indeed improving each week. It's very difficult for any quarterback to win 3 consecutive games, but for a rookie quarterback, Bo is really something. The secret is to go 1-0 each week. That way it always is a 1-game season. Wait until February to keep count. Well, I agree, 1-0 each week. They do count the whole time, so I'm going to count if that's cool.
Mentality.
Let's see what else we got. Keep throwing at CBPS2 because Riley Moss starts stacking NFL games with more interceptions. The Broncos defense and the Broncos offense start gelling. Fire emoji. The Broncos will be hard to beat. Other NFL teams might have to take the Broncos seriously when that day comes in the 2024 NFL season. Bo leave it and go Bo Broncos. That's from Michael Rocchio. J. Prez Bronk, a friend of the show.
A friend of the show.
I
love those.
I would let Eric coach my kids' Little League football team.
Aww. That's adorable. Would you take the job?
I don't know, it depends. J. Prez Bronk.
Does it come with snacks?
It was more, what sort of talent are we working with?
Oh, wow.
Is your kid good at football? I don't want to coach a bad football team. I mean, I'm going to elevate whoever's on the team.
Mm-hmm. It shouldn't matter because you're just that good of a coach.
Well, yeah, but I think sometimes it really does matter. You gotta have a stud. Your kid's a stud. We can get something going. maybe like a Little Giants situation. I watched that movie on the way to West Virginia.
Did you?
I did. It was heartwarming.
At least that's the tone.
KG Rick. I really like this young woman. It's kind of...
Appreciate the young.
But then he says, "Good job, kid," which...
Is that to you?
No, to you, I think. I think it's maybe it was. Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe it is. Catherine, good job. Good job. Let's go. Okay.
Let's go.
That's all we got.
That's all we got.
Leave your comments. Leave your questions.
Yeah. Leave awkward questions for Aric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody did ask if you've ever farted, both of us, on the air.
No.
And I was like, I feel like I'm going to skip that one, but no, I decided not to skip it.
I mean, you're showing the people that
That's why Ben Swanson isn't on the podcast anymore, because that kept happening.
Aw. Poor Ben. You're mean. Wait till he listens to this. I can't wait for that day. All right. Well, again, make sure you guys comment and leave your questions, comments, all that stuff. We love reading all those great comments you guys leave. Really, get into the show. But to kick things off, this is the number 1 scoring defense going against the number 2 scoring defense. The Broncos holding number 2 and the Chargers holding number 1. Before we really dive deep into, Bo Nix and the run game and kind of all things that have really been flowing for this team lately, I feel like we have to start with the defense and what Vance Joseph has really been able to do this season compared to last year, and just kind of like the progress of everything. I talked to a couple of the guys and they just said that I asked Nick Bonito, like, what is the biggest difference from last year's defense to this year's defense? And he just says, I just feel like everyone just knows their job. And I feel that Vance just does this motivation talk, or just he gives us everything we need to make us feel like we are more than prepared to take on these teams. It doesn't matter who the opponent is, who the number 1 receivers are, who the quarterback is. They just feel ready to run through a wall for Vance Joseph.
Yeah, they've obviously been really good. If you look at the stats through 5 weeks, they are better from a points per game and a yards per game standpoint than the 2015 defense.
And that's high praise, because that 2015 defense was lethal.
Well, let's just, maybe you weren't listening. Maybe you're in your car right now. You're driving down the road. You just saw the maybe there's like a great sign for some Conoco coffee, or you see a King Soopers in the distance and you got really excited. Maybe you weren't listening. The defense is currently allowing through 5 weeks fewer points per game and yards per game than the 2015 defense. That's wild. I mean, I knew this team was playing well, and then you see that and you're like, wow, they are really playing well.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just interested to see one, and Sean Payton kind of said, hey, it's early in the season. I'm still interested to see, like, how long can you keep up this level of play? Like, I have no doubt that they can continue to be one of the better defenses in the NFL, but this is, like, historic to some degree in terms of how well they are playing.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can keep it up. And this is a team that is going to rely on its defense. Sean Payton has said several times that you always have to know what that side of the ball is doing when you're calling an offense, when you're seeing how many chances you take. As long as the defense plays at that level, the Broncos offense can, I think, take fewer chances. It can, really rely on the run game and get things going. It can allow Bo Nix to play safe, complementary football. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing. Like, you still take shots down the field, but this defense is giving you a chance to really play the way you want to play and dictate how teams are able to play you late. And listen, if the offense then gets points, like against the Raiders then had to go into attack mode late. They had to chase. It sets you up for interceptions if you're the opposing offense. It sets you up for sacks. It's been really impressive what they're doing. And obviously, Elisa, it's at every level, really. I don't know what Zach Allen did to Pro Football Focus. If somebody out there can explain to me how he's being graded, because every week he's got a sack. He's second in the NFL in quarterback hits. I think he's third in quarterback pressures. He's playing out of his mind. He truly, like, if you put the name TJ Watt or Chris Jones next to his name, like where his name was, people would be like, this is a defensive player of the year type candidate, or this is an all-pro type guy. So I hope he gets that recognition at some point. And then obviously Surtain and Moss, what they're doing right now is is spectacular. So really at every level, they're playing quite well.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at some numbers about the Denver's pass rush, 19 in sacks, third most, 41 QB hits, second most, and 75 QB pressures, third most in the NFL, and it's the beginning of week 6. So what they've been able to do over the first 5 weeks has really been impressive. Nick Bonito has really kind of come into his own, having a sack in each of the last 3 games. How effective has he been alongside, like you said, Zach Allen, Jonathan Cooper, DJ, and all those guys?
Yeah, I think what's impressive is that the rush is coming from a lot of different places right now. Like you said, Nick Bonito sacks in 3 consecutive games. Jonathan Cooper leads the team with 4 sacks. Zach Allen has 3 sacks. Obviously, Jonah Ellis has been in there on a couple of them. John Franklin Myers. And so it's not just one guy. And I think that that's partially because Broncos have talented guys and are finding a way to get it done. But also the way that Vance Joseph is calling this defense is you don't quite know where the rush is coming from. You don't know who to watch out for. On one play, it might be JFM. On the next play, it might be Nick Bonito getting there. And so that creates problems for an opposing offense when you can't say, like, we have to stop this guy and we'll be okay. Like, that's not really the case right now for Denver's defense. They're bringing it from all sorts of different angles. Justin Herbert, who is a fantastic player, obviously, he, right now, the way the Chargers want to play, they want to run the ball.
Yeah.
And they are, it seems like, he's had fewer than 180 yards passing in every game this season. I believe he's averaging close to 160 yards per game.
Just about. And
when you pressure him, teams are finding some success. I think every year in the NFL, his passer rating has dropped when under pressure. And obviously still a fantastic player. But when you see, especially right now, and we'll see what his game status ends up being, he was limited Wednesday in practice. He's been dealing with that ankle injury. I think if you can force Justin Herbert to try to get out of the pocket or even make him just hold it there and get some hits on him, make him hold it for an extra beat, which that's why this pass rush has been so good, is because the secondary has allowed them to be that good and kind of vice versa. They're working really well together. Yeah. But get some pressure on Justin Herbert, maybe force a turnover or 2, get some sacks. This team has typically played well against Herbert, and I'm interested to see if they can keep that up. He has not turned the ball over much. I think 5 touchdowns, 1 interception so far this year. He's been 90-plus passer rating in every game so far this year. So he's playing well, but I do think, like, if he's a little banged up and he can't move quite the way he wants to, if you can get to him a little bit, and we'll see if Rashawn Slater plays. It does seem like maybe Joe Alt will be back. So those are things to keep an eye on. But that's where I feel like the Broncos, especially defensively, have an opportunity is let Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, Jaquan McMillan, the safeties, and P.J. Locke and Brandon Jones, let those guys cover Quentin Johnson and Ladd McConkey, and then get after Justin Herbert, see if you can make a game-changing play.
And that's really the focus point that has been for this defense each and every week, is kind of controlling the tempo, making them play on their side of the field, really creating early turnovers, starting fast. And you mentioned about how much better like this team can get. And if you talk to the guys in the locker room, they all have this same, like, we're staying humble, we're staying locked in. Garrett Bowles, after practice, we caught up with him, and they asked, like, what is the biggest challenge of winning 3 in a row? And he said, not getting complacent, realizing, like, we can always lose the next game, and that's not what we want to do. So we stay humble, we stay focused, we're ready for our assignments. It doesn't matter who comes in here. We're all trying to make sure that everyone does their job. And the fact the defense really feels that way too. Riley Moss, as great as he's been playing, every single time you talk to him, he's like, it's not good enough. I have to be better. I have to do better. And they do celebrate their wins, and they are celebrating their accomplishments that they've made it this far, but they also are making sure they don't get caught up in the hype of anything, because they know that the ultimate goal is to really have a long and successful, healthy season with their key guys. Now, when you look at the other side of the ball, you see Khalil Mack on that defense. Part of that, again, the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL right now in the Chargers. He has 13 sacks in 13 career games versus the Broncos. He really has had a lot of success when he was with the Raiders against his team, and then now that he's with the Chargers. So when you look at the Broncos O-line really kind of defending against a guy like Khalil Mack, what do you see there?
Yeah. Elisa, I'm going to go like full presidential debate here.
Oh.
And be like, thank you for your question. I really need to respond to something you said a second ago. I just one last thing on the defense I want to say is that you mentioned like wanting to be better and staying.
Please interrupt me next time. This is not a moderated thing. Be like, hold up. I got to touch on that. You got to do it just like that, though.
I will not do that. I'll just wait patiently and then say I'm going to go back. But in terms of not being complacent, right? Like, I do think this defense can look at last week's game, the Broncos defense, and say, like, listen, we gave up 10 points and very nearly gave up 17 points on the Raiders' first 3 drives of the game. Yeah. And they can say, hey, Pat Surtain made a heck of a play and deserves every award he got, AFC Defensive Player of the Week, only the second corner in team history to win that multiple times. Yep. Which, when you think of all the guys, Chris Harris, Champ Bailey, like, that's wild.
That no-fly zone, basically.
It's just Surtain and Talib that did that. But like, I think you could look at that and say, hey, we ended up okay here and we gave up 18 points, but this could have been bad and we could have put our offense in a really bad spot. Yeah. We got to be better to start. I do think it's encouraging that they've shown the ability to make those adjustments. Like last week, they found something that clicked, and then the rest of the game they were lights out. And we've talked about it. I think it was 7 drives, 22 yards over that stretch. So that is encouraging to me that, one, it's not hard to find an area to improve, right? But 2, you saw them do it, and hopefully they'll do it moving forward. And then in regards to like the keep winning, and maybe we can touch on this a bit later, but like 3 in a row is great. And we're certainly, I think I looked up a stat that the Broncos have won 3 in a row, at least 3 in a row, twice since Sean Payton's been here. So like basically the first 22 games of his tenure. Since 2017, from 2017 to 2022, the Broncos only won 3 in a row, and it was not 4 or 5 in a row. It was exactly 3 in a row, twice, in that whole, 6-7 year period. Yeah. And so, like, I know it kind of feels, I don't want to say new, but it's somewhat unfamiliar since during this playoff streak to win 3 in a row. But then you look at teams around the league that are making the playoffs, and it's like, you have to do this sort of thing. You have to win 3 in a row here, and then maybe you pick up a loss at some point, and then you go rattle off 3 more in a row. Like, if you're going to go 10-7 or 11-6, or especially if you're going to compete for a division title in a division like the AFC West with Patrick Mahomes, you're going to have to go on these long win streaks. And like, if you're going 12-5 in a season, that means you're winning 3 at every 4 games essentially. And so that's where. I do just, it's great that the Broncos have won 3 in a row, but there's a lot more work to do to be like, okay, we got to win 3 in a row a lot more often, or 3 out of 4 a lot more often, instead of, 1, then 1 loss, then 1, then 1 loss, or dropping 2 or 3 in a row and then getting 3 in a row. Like, this has to become the consistent output of this team. And now I will cede the floor and we can go back to the offense.
Well, I was saying that you make a good point there. And I think that is the focal point. I think that's what head coach Sean Payton has really been able to do with this group, is having them not get ahead of themselves, right? And he's talked a lot about just trying to find the perfect picture, the perfect scenario for them. And they've gotten close and he's seen great things. But as the head coach, he's doing his job and being like, but this is where, this is why people want you to coach the little league team, or their little football team, because when you have that mindset of this is great, but let's look at these areas for improvement. And to your point, the Raiders really could have got away with a huge lead at that point in the game. That was a game-changing point in that game when Pat Surtain got that interception, ran it back for the touchdown, because that really changed the dynamic. You're tied. You're going into halftime. You're not down. And that's what key guys on the team are going to do. But when you look at what the offensive side is going to do as well, going back to my question with Khalil Mack, you have a rookie quarterback, but this front line has really been good at protecting Bo. I know he took a couple sacks against the Raiders, but no interceptions. And I feel like he's really been able to kind of like duck and weave a little bit and find the best position to put his receivers in.
Yeah, I mean, part of it with Bo is the athleticism. Like, there is that athleticism that exists. And I think, as Sean Payton said, I believe Monday, every week you see him make a play with his legs that helps this team win a football game. And he made several of them against the Raiders. It's also the ability to process. And I think Sean Payton, again, said this on Monday, when you see just the more experience you get, and the fact that he's 5 games in and is doing this is really encouraging, I think, for the long-term development of Bo's career. But, hey, they bring in base defense, and then they go to nickel, and then they go to dime, or it's a penny front, like all these different things. When Bo is able to see those and then know where the pressure's coming from, here's where I'm going to adjust the protection, or I'm short person here, I'm going to have to get the ball out quick.
Yeah.
Like all those things play into the not taking sacks in addition to the athleticism. And I think the more and more comfortable he gets, the more you're going to see that. I think you've seen that development over the first 5 weeks. Sean Payton has talked about how his processing has gotten better and better. For Bo now, it becomes about consistency. And he said that on Wednesday, that now it's just playing at a consistent level. I think one of the things we've seen from Bo, and this is somewhat of a generalization based on the last 2 weeks, but the first half has not necessarily always been pretty for this offense. And then in the second half, they stick with it. They find a way to get things rolling. And listen, if you score 34 points, it's okay if you have a slow first half, but that's not always going to be the case. So I do think there needs to be some sort of just get that going a little bit quicker. I think that'll happen as Bo gets more experienced.
Yeah.
But he's playing right now in a way that you can win football games, and that's what's most important, right? Is the wins. And if the defense plays at this level, and Bo is able to make timely plays, make some good throws. You know, you saw one down the sideline to Cortland Sutton. You saw the touchdown pass to Josh Reynolds.
Yeah.
You saw some plays with his legs. The throw to Troy Franklin at the end of the first half that sets up that field goal. Those are all winning plays. And as long as he keeps making those winning plays and avoiding turnovers, like you mentioned, 3 games in a row, no interceptions, has not fumbled the football either. So he's protecting the football. As Sean Payton puts it, you don't feel like a minus play is about to happen anytime he gets the ball, which you look back to last year, obviously a lot of minus plays. And so that's a key, certainly as this team moves forward. I am interested, Elisa, in like, what does this offensive line look like this week? And as we're recording this, we don't even have a Thursday's injury report, but Luke Wattenberg, Alex Palczewski did not practice on Wednesday, both dealing with ankle injuries. Alex Forsythe came in at the end of that game to replace Wattenberg. Matt Parrott was over there to replace Palczewski. I'm still a week away from Mike McGlinchey possibly coming back. So, again, some of this comes into, is Joey Bosa able to play for the Chargers? And if he's not, then it makes things a little bit easier for this Broncos offensive line. But that's definitely something to watch. Of a year ago, this offensive line was the same the whole way through. Mike McGlinchey missed the last start with an injury that he said maybe he could have played through if I remember correctly, if it was like a game with the playoffs on the line. But this year there's already been a bunch of moving parts. So with a Chargers defense that is so good, not allowing explosive plays, Sean Payton said, listen, when you watch their explosive play reel, it's short, it's over, it's done. And I'm like, he's like, where are the rest of them? But with against a Chargers defense that is so good, does not allow explosive plays, is that offensive line, the lack of continuity there, having so many new faces, is that going to be a potential issue for the Broncos?
Garrett Bowles kind of touched on that after practice on Wednesday, and he just said that this team is one of the closest he's been a part of. And the next man up mentality is something that everyone says, but that he really does feel that whoever comes in, they're ready to take on whatever challenge is in front of them. And you kind of seen that the last couple of weeks, like when Palczewski came in and you didn't hear his name, which means that he was playing very well for this team. And just looking at last week, in week 5, Bo Nix hit 11 different players on his team, set a single game franchise record for just distribution of the ball there. And the way that he kind of really elevated his game, I think he had like season highs in passing yards and I think like was like the completion rating, things like that.
Pass yards per attempt, completion rating, touchdowns. Did have a few more passing yards, I think, against Tampa, but certainly passer rating was 117 something, which was by far the highest. So he definitely
17.2.
I think that counts as 117 something.
Hey, we have to be specific. We taking people to math class, right? We have to be specific with all the numbers. But you did say, set career highs, completion percentage 70.4%, passing TDs, passing yards and attempts, and passer rating. He is one of 7 rookies since the 1970 merger with 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing TDs. A few Notable names on that list too. We have
through his first 5 games there, right?
Yeah, and it's like through his first 5 games of the season, he's in line with Dak Prescott, who won 2016 Offensive Rookie of the Year, RG3, which won Offensive Rookie of the Year, Cam Newton, and even Archie Manning. We're throwing that from 1971. We have to throw it in there because this stat started from 1970, so I feel like it's only right we throw Archie Manning in there.
Archie's our guy. It is worth noting that Jaden Daniels has also done that, so he's right
and Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, but Jaden Daniels right in that race for Rookie of the Year this year with everybody else. But yeah, the offense is going to have to find a way to make timely plays, I think is the right way to look at this. You don't necessarily need to, like, this to me feels like just kind of a brawl of a game. I don't know if it'll be just like that Steelers game, but like 2 defenses going back and forth. Field position's going to matter. Can you run the 2-minute efficiently and get points? Can you handle the end of game scenario correctly? Can you avoid turnovers? Maybe you only get 2 or 3 red zone trips. Like, can you make the most of those? If your defense does force a takeaway and gives you a short field, can you make the most of that? Like, this does not, just because of how good these defenses are, I could see this being a game where it's a little bit ugly, it's tight back and forth, and whoever can make those, because I mentioned the Chargers defense doesn't give up explosives. Broncos is number 1 in not giving up explosives. So this is going to be a grinded out, hard-fought football game, and can the Broncos find a way to make a few more plays? This is going to be right up there with one of their toughest tests of the season, and I don't know that I would have viewed it that way like the last few years. And for the Chargers are super talented, and they have been for a long time, but they've not always had that, like, from their coach, the extra little oomph they needed. And Jim Harbaugh brings that, I think, to them very much in the same way that Sean Payton brings that to the Broncos. And I think these in a lot of ways are similar teams. They went through some roster changes over the offseason. They've got old school, tough head coaches. They're not asking their quarterbacks to do too much. They want to run the football. They've got great defenses. The Chargers are 2-2. The Broncos are 3-2. Like, these are 2 teams that are similar, and they're going to be, I think, battling and jockeying for wild card position all year long. So if you can get one here over the Chargers, especially at home, and as Sean Payton said, you go 3-3 in your division, you're not doing anything. Like, we don't see good teams go 3-3 in their division and accomplish anything worth noting. So, find a way to win your division home games. You're off to a good start, and it's gonna be tough. The offense is gonna need to find ways to make plays, avoid turnovers, and you mentioned all those guys that caught passes. Like, is it Cortland Sutton that makes plays? Is it Troy Franklin? Josh Reynolds held out of practice early this week with an injury. Like, we'll see if he can go, but this is gonna be a game where somebody's gonna have to make a play for you offensively to get points.
Yeah, and I found the exact number. It was 12 out of 15 of the last matchups in Denver were decided by 1 score or less. So these, like you said, this is like the gritty wins that the Broncos do have experience in early on the season, more particularly with that Jets game of really kind of grinding a game out, really kind of battling it out with the offense and the defense. You touched on the running game. We look at one side, you have J.K. Dobbins. Look at the other side, you have Javonte Williams. J.K. Dobbins has been really successful so far this season. He struggled a little bit over the last 2 weeks in particular. The Broncos rushing defense, I believe, is ranked 10th right now. The Chargers rushing defense is ranked 6th. So when you look at kind of that battle of running the football, especially when you said these 2 coaches aren't really asking too much of their quarterback, how do you see kind of that matchup with J.K. and Javonte Williams?
Yeah, well, 2 kind of like different paths for J.K. Dobbins and Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams has been really strong over the last 2 weeks, I think averaging almost 5 yards a carry. Last week, all-purpose yards, scrimmage yards, including rushing and receiving yards. He had the most total yards he's had since, I believe, in Kansas City the year before he got hurt. And so that goes all the way back to 2021, his rookie year. That speaks to how long it's been since he's had that sort of performance, whereas J.K. Dobbins started the year really strong, I think averaging 9+ yards per carry in the first 2 games, which were both wins for the Chargers. And then over the last 2 games, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's less than 3 yards per carry, right? Isn't it right around there?
Yeah.
And so 2 guys kind of going in opposite directions. Obviously, Dobbins still has that talent. You've got to be aware of him. I think it still starts for both teams and really most games, right? Like, can the Broncos stop the run, bottle J.K. Dobbins up, and put Herbert in 3rd and long where he has to? Because if J.K. Dobbins runs the ball well and it's 3rd and 2, it's 3rd and 3, and Justin Herbert can sit back there and just quickly throw passes, it's going to be hard to get stops. He's accurate. He's a really good quarterback. They're going to find success. If you can shut J.K. Dobbins down a little bit, the way the Broncos rushing defense has done to
over
most
the last
guys,
few,
then, barring that one long run there by Amir Abdullah last week, they've been pretty good about limiting explosives. If you can put Justin Herbert in 3rd and 8, and he's got to hold the ball for an extra split second because Ladd McConkey's got to get down the field and Jaquan McMillan is covering him tightly in the slot. Does that force him from the pocket and then Zach Allen gets a hit on him, or JFM gets a hit on him, or does Jonathan Cooper come free and strip sack him? That's where defensively you've got to get the edge, and then offensively the same thing, right? Like, can Javonte Williams? That was what I think was so impressive about last week against the Raiders, is the Broncos ran the ball well, which set up the pass. If it's 2nd and 3, you feel like you can take a shot down the field, because if you don't get it, okay, it's 3rd and 3. It's not going to be 3rd and 10. Right. And so that's important. And then I also think what's important is which coach is going to be committed to the run. Like, even if you go 3 and out early, or you don't score and you're running the football and you're getting stopped, like, who's willing to stick with it into the second half? Because I think where we've seen Denver find success in the running game was second half against Tampa. Second half against the Jets. Second half against the Raiders.
That's where those adjustments that you were mentioning kind of really come into play.
The adjustments, and I also think just like wearing them down a little bit of like the second half, do guys still want to tackle? and so like if the Broncos run the ball early, and I think they had 9 carries in the first half last week, and they were effective, but they didn't run the ball all that much. And then you get to the second half, they run the ball a lot more. Like, do they stick with it again? And maybe it's not pretty, or maybe it's difficult, maybe it's tough sledding early, but you stick with it, and that leads to a big drive in the second half that helps you take a lead. Or do the Chargers do that and they say, we're going to stick with it, and then it opens up the play action? I mean, you've got to, that's why in this game, like, can you stick to your game plan? Can you stick running the football if that's what the game plan is? Because, listen, there's going to be drives against this defense for both teams where Herbert's going to go 3 and out. Bo and the Broncos offense will probably go 3 and out at times because of how good this Chargers defense is. Who can win the field position battle? Who can get a couple first downs? Like, even if you're not going to score on that drive, get 2 first downs, kick it down inside the 10-yard line where you flip the field. Now, if you force a punt, Marvin Mims catching it at the 50-yard line, he can return it for 20 yards, boom, you're in field goal range. And that's how you play winning football in like a really tough game against a tough defense. And but you're right, it does start with running the football and stopping the run. I mean,
you look at J.K. Dobbins as well. He had 2 touchdowns over the first 2 weeks, and then no touchdowns in weeks 3 and 4. Let's see, I think he had 14 carries, 38 yards, 2.6 yards per carry, and that's combining weeks 3 and week 4, which, as you said, were both losses for this team. So you kind of see that the Chargers really do kind of rely on that, and for JK to really kind of get going. And I feel the Broncos, in particular, you have Jaleel McLaughlin as well, scored a touchdown versus the Raiders, and that kind of tandem, that 1-2 punch that they've been able to kind of get going, alongside with Bo Nix being a dual threat as well, because he's able to make plays with his legs as well. So I think having those things as a recipe for success, especially when you're going against number 1 scoring defense, because this defense really is impressive over the first couple of weeks. But you look at this matchup, and I think it came at a good time for Bo Nix because, as one of our commenters said, this team is on a streak. I won't repeat the... Actually, I won't. Hot AF. We don't know what the AF stands for. But, you see this team, and for them to have back-to-back division rivals at home after
hot
coming...
and fun, maybe? And fun?
And fun.
I think that's what it is. They're hot and fun.
When you have these back-to-back division rivals at home, I feel like it's good because when Bo Nix had his first home game, they went on the road for 2 weeks after that. So I think to kind of have that consistency, being able to really kind of be at home in front of the fans is helpful, especially when you're going against a division opponent. When I caught up with Nick Bonito, he said it's added extra motivation to when you're going against, because he's like, you want to get all these. You want to get all the division wins because that's what matters down the line.
Yeah, I said it toward the top of the show, but this is a win that'll matter, or a game that will matter later in the year, both in terms of division standing. Like one of the first playoff tiebreakers is division standing. So if you and the Chargers end the year at the same record, who is better in the division, that's going to matter. And so it also, I think I mentioned before, like it's not about just getting 3 in a row. It's about like developing this culture of expecting to win 3 in a row, or expecting to win 3 out of every 4. And I think there's something to be said for stacking another one, especially against a tough opponent. I think it would probably be the Broncos' best win of the year if they're able to win this one, just based on how good this defense is.
Yeah.
I always expect a tough matchup against Jim Harbaugh. But yeah, this team, I think, find a way to, I don't want to call it wiggle room exactly, because you need these wins, but like put yourself in a position where you can go 5-2 next week.
Yeah.
Put yourself in a position in a couple weeks where you can go 6-2. And like, there's nothing, your season is not over with a loss. You're in a good spot just being even 3-2, but like put some distance between yourself and 500 and really get yourself on a roll here. And it is going to be a test for, I think, particularly Bo and this offense against, maybe a little bit banged up on the offensive line against this Chargers defense. Yeah. It's going to be a test for the defense. I mean, Herbert, you look at the first 4 weeks of the season, it's no disrespect to anybody that they've played, but I would say Justin Herbert is probably the best quarterback they've faced so far this year. Aaron Rodgers obviously was banged up, as is Justin Herbert. But like the tests are only going to get harder.
Yeah.
You're going to get to a point here where you play Baltimore and Kansas City on the road in back-to-back weeks. So prove to yourselves what you can do. Sean Payton talks a lot about that. That belief is born from demonstrated ability. If you go out and you beat the Chargers and you get to 4-2, like that's going to continue to show you, hey, we're ready to compete in this division. We're ready to compete for a playoff spot. I think nationally, people are starting to like perk their ears up a little bit. Elisa, they're like starting to notice the Broncos. If you look at some of the power rankings, and I know that some coaches call that rat poison, like the positive praise that you get when you're playing well.
Yeah. But
like the Broncos are starting to jump up into like the teens and the power rankings, and even the top 10 in some people's power rankings. And people are like, hold on, wait a second. The Broncos have something going here. The defense is playing well. Bo Nix played well against the Raiders. Yeah. And
in a big game. Like, let's be very clear. That was a very, very big game for this team, for the fans. I think after coming back from that win in New York, like a lot of the guys in practice were like, winning on the road is great, but winning at home is really important, and protecting home field is really important. So they take a lot of pride in playing in front of Broncos country and getting these wins in front of Broncos country. Like that is a focal point for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to keep winning at home, right? Mm-hmm. Like the success, like the path towards success for a team in the NFL is typically like going 6-2 or 5-3. Yeah. At home, and then can you split your road game? So if you go 6-2, and this is a little bit different now that 17 games, but like go 6-2 at home, split your road games, boom, you're at 10 wins. Yeah, like that's what it used to be, and so can the Broncos improve to 2-1 at home, kind of work toward that winning record at home, but also just like prove to people who are starting to think, hey, maybe the Broncos are something, but we need to see it more. Like it was just the Raiders, right? Like if you beat the Chargers, who I think are always nationally like this trendy pick to make the playoffs, and they've got Herbert, who's spectacular, and Harbaugh. Like if you win and you beat the beat the Chargers this week, people are going to really start paying attention and say, man, this Broncos team that was written off before the season even started. And if you look at all these rankings of talent and position groups, like they were near the bottom and everything. People are going to have to kind of wake up and pay attention and say, hey, maybe the Broncos are onto something.
Yeah. I mean, we hope so, because it is going to be a very exciting matchup on Sunday, week 6. The Chargers coming to Empower Field at Mile High to take on the Denver Broncos. And we will be there, front row seats. Get your popcorn ready, You excited?
I'll be ready. I'm ready.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. This is our coach, math teacher, lead writer for DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. Make sure you guys subscribe, comment, and we will see you guys on Sunday.